Well, Fo, thanks for turning in again today. We're a little late getting this to you as there were some technical issues and some late breaking news. So let's just get right into it. Alberta Premier in Canada, Danielle Smith, she's running into criticism from Central Canada because she's announced that she's going to have a referendum in her province on issues like immigration, on issues like constitutional questions. And in Central Canada, they're more used to let's say more dictatorial type of government from on high, and not so used to Alberta taking more of a Switzerland model on key issues where the elected officials say, you know what, we need to hear directly from the people and the people know best. And so we'll see where that goes as she takes on those particular issues and brings them to the people to get rulings from that. As Prime Minister Carney continues to push Canada to do more and more deals in Mexico and more business in Mexico and not as much in the US. A Canadian mining company is really under the gun in Mexico right now. There were some kidnappings, cartel kidnappings of about 10 of the workers. And so the Mexican Attorney General, instead of going after the cartel, seems to be going after the Canadian company, saying, I wonder if the Canadian company did something wrong. So more and more problems emerging when you're dealing with a country that has, let's say, at best, a questionable system of jurisprudence and a legal system. You're going to run into problems. So it would be good to see Canada pressing on to fix up the trade blockage that is happening with the U.S. right now and get back to dealing with a country which has proper levels of jurisprudence and law and order. On the law and order front and looking what's happening with the U.S., the Epstein files now focusing on a fair bit of contact with people in Canada. Interesting that there doesn't seem to be a lot of curious media interest in Canada about this. One of the communications, we're going to talk about this gentleman here being in touch with Epstein a number of times and even visiting the island. And he qualifies, he says that in his view, Montreal is the second best place in the world to enjoy singledom, right after the island there in the Caribbean. So interesting to see where that goes. We hope there's some more follow-up, and the Montreal emails that are coming from the entrepreneur and crypto investor Austin Hill from Montreal shows a number of communications, even several times meeting Epstein at the island, though it appears he stayed in a hotel off island. But more and more we see Canadians being mentioned, and why would they be doing that? Why would Canadians be involved, especially if this was after the charges that on which Epstein was found guilty? And also on the fact-checking side, and I'll give a point here to CBC because it's been popping up that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was in the Epstein files. CBC did the fact-checking on that one. They find out, in fact, there was monies paid to an organization called Harper and Associates. Well, there's several organizations in Canada and the U.S. called Harper and Associates, Stephen Harper being one. This was not Stephen Harper's. So I'm going to give some kudos to CBC for going after that and tracing that down. Well, in the Gaza Strip, some problems never seem to change. We've got Doctors Without Borders, which of course is a very good organization, doctors providing their services, especially in distress situations. They say they're going to scale down their operations in Gaza at one of the region's biggest medical facilities, the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. And they're saying it's more and more difficult because there are still so many Hamas, I'm going to call them fighters, that are on hospital property and in the hospital with guns and armed. Now, back when the Gaza war was in full fling, and really being reported daily, and when media sources would report that Hamas had military installations in hospitals and schools, they were hiding them in all these sensitive places. People didn't really want to pay attention, but now as Doctors Without Borders are pointing that out, people finally happening to pay attention. Well, you know, the situation regarded to what we call these tribunals in Canada, human rights tribunals, These are separate from the regular court system. They don't follow the regular rules of justice. They don't follow regular rules related to evidence gathering. They don't follow regular rules in terms of testifying, being able to face your accuser. And so we see a gentleman by the name of Barry Neufeld, longtime teacher in the Lower Mainland in British Columbia, and he's been facing these charges for years. He had posted and talked about his concerns about his own views on LGBTQ, on transgender, and had posted these. And some members of those communities, the LGBTQ community, activists there, brought charges against them. They didn't go to court. They weren't allowed to go to court. They went to the human rights tribunals, which are increasingly turning into almost like star chambers in terms of who they let in, who they don't let in. I've talked to people who wanted to attend the proceedings, and they had to go through all kinds of strange procedures, even to go in. They weren't allowed to talk about what was going on. These secret tribunals need to stop, and elected politicians need to stand up, and we can say very openly we are completely for human rights protections, and it should be done in the fullness of a court of law, and citizens should not be slammed down. And incidentally, at the same time, the Human Rights Tribunal in Quebec, the province of Quebec, just fined a restaurant because an activist, a person who calls himself a non-binary activist, whatever that may mean, I'll leave it up to you, went after them and sued them because on their, it's called Station 10, it's a place you can go, it's a beauty salon of sorts, and they show men's hairstyles and women's hairstyles and label them as such, and this non-binary activist said he was offended, he was hurt, and his feelings were hurt on that, that they had listings that were male and female, and the tribunal ruled in favor of him, has punished the owners and say they've got to pay up. So we'll see where that goes, or if politicians will just continue to remain silent. And if you look just across the border in Montreal, in Vermont, a different ruling because it went to a full court proceeding. It didn't go into a hidden star chamber. You have a couple who owned a care home for children, a daycare type of home, Melinda Antonucci and Casey Mathieu, and they were forced to take part in LGBTQ training as part of their license application. They opposed that, but they went and but they went to court on this and said that it wasn't right. They won the court case. The court said they can't be forced to take some of this, let's say, social engineering training. The court also said that they are allowed to use Christian material in their particular child care center, which most people would think, well, that's just normal, isn't it, that you'd be able to use Christian material? No, not so. You can't use Christian material. You can use LGBTQ material. Anyway, they won their case, shows the difference of when a case goes into a courtroom setting or in the behind the screen at these Star Chamber tribunals. Well, the Olympics, as they continue to unfold, are interesting. There's more and more reporting from the Wall Street Journal about Eileen Gu, and I think you'll realize I was talking about her before this was in the mainstream media 2 and 3 weeks ago, about her being American but skating for China, and also Zhu Yi, that's a fellow American skater now competing in China. They've been paid, between the two of them over the last 2 years, $14 million by the Beijing Municipal Sports Bureau to play for China and skate and ski for China. And Vice President Vance said, is getting really attacked because he said he's going to keep cheering for athletes who play for the United States. And people just coming unglued, said he was attacking these other athletes, which he wasn't. So it shows our temperatures are really rising on this, in this whole particular area of discussion. Watch for Eileen Gu. I mean, she's amazing in what she does. She's now probably the richest in history in terms of what she does with Olympic sports. And so, I mean, good for her, but she shouldn't whine if somebody says they can't cheer for her if she's not in the U.S. Well, an incident just happened at an airport where a passenger was questioned. A passenger was bringing the dog onto the plane, and they did have their service animal form. You know, if you want to, you can't normally bring a pet on a plane, but if you've got a certified form that says, yeah, the animal's there for emotional support, you can do it. But that was scrutinized by the people at the desk. They found some irregularities in it, and the passenger just walked off in anger, got on the plane, left the dog. So now it looks like the dog needs emotional support. The reason I'm saying that is because I was just visited a facility, a healthcare facility, and I was asked by an individual, an acquaintance who was in the psychiatric unit there if I would come up and spend some time with him. So I did that. But when I walked into the psychiatric unit, and this is on the ground floor coming in for the parking lot, big sign there, and it was saying, and this is a place that's concerned about care for individuals, it says certified animal comfort, animals not permitted on premises. So the comfort dogs were not allowed to go into the place where comfort was needed. Interesting situation there. Well, going to something much more world impacting, we now see the Gerald R. Ford USS Carrier. This is a huge aircraft carrier being deployed in the Middle East. It's ticking up a couple more points. This is either going to come to a head and there's going to be some increased military activity, or it may cause the Islamist extremist leaders in Iran to back off. We're going to see what happens. That particular aircraft carrier it has more power, more firepower than many and maybe most countries do. It can carry 75 aircraft. It carries the F-18s, the Super Hornets. It carries the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. Carries the M16 helicopters. It is loaded and moving into the area. So tensions on the increase. If you want to get your heart rate down, interesting, they're posting now the states. This is in the U.S. You'll probably see it emerging in Canada, where it's posted the lowest average resting heart rates. So that's supposed to be a sign of health. And not surprisingly, but take a guess, the number one state for lowest resting heart rate, Hawaii. And of course, when people are in nicer climates, they tend to exercise more. That's one of the reasons. But South Dakota is number 3 and doesn't really qualify in the warm temperature market. And they say it's because of the high percentage of its rural area, its family farms. There's a lot more stability, a lot less stress. And Utah doing well in the top 7. California doesn't even make it in the number of top 7 states for lowest heart rate. So just as we know, people will move to states and jurisdictions that have low income tax rates, looks like people may be moving to the places that have the lowest resting heart rates. We'll see what kind of trend continues to develop there. The situation, a lot of people feeling badly for athletes with disabilities who are not going to be allowed to compete in the Paralympics, which are coming up in 2 weeks. These are athletes from Russia. And because of their involvement, of course, in the war, they're not. These are athletes who spent, their lives as persons with disabilities, wanting to compete, not being allowed to. This is being seen as somewhat hypocritical. For instance, Cuba is allowed to be at those particular games, persons with disabilities, and yet Cuba sends thousands of soldiers to Russia to kill Ukrainians. The same with China. So feeling bad for those particular athletes. Hopefully something can be worked out in terms of competition at a huge, the India AI Impact Summit taking place in India, hosted, of course, by PM Narendra Modi. I've met Prime Minister Modi on a number of occasions. Interesting guy to deal with, and the dealings worked out well on the trade side for us. But there's a shot, there's a scene. So you got all these top AI founders and CEOs over there, and there's a scene where they're all on stage doing what they call the family photo, where they all have their hands raised up and taking part in this picture. But OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, though they're Amodei, no relation to the Prime Minister, even though they're standing side by side in the photo, they got their hands up in the air. They're the only two that are not holding hands. So maybe they need a little bit more encouragement to play nice there. When we're talking about that, there is this trend that seems to be continue where many, as they call them, 20-somethings, 20-year-olds, are having a bit of a trend. It's not overall by any means or overwhelming, but they're ditching their smartphones and for dumb phones. That is, phones that all they can do is maybe email, text, and make phone calls. And that is being seen as not necessarily a healthy thing, because you're cutting yourself off from all kinds of information that you might need. But interesting, a bit of a trend continuing of the smartphones to the dumb phones. And streaming services are being accused of now dumbing down and taking way too much time to keep their audiences informed. And the reason they're doing that and having to repeat certain messages in whatever movie or whatever TV show it is, there's a study out that shows 94% of 25 to 34-year-olds scroll, like on their iPhones, while they're actually watching TV. And that's a pretty big percent. I'm not saying anything pro or con about that, but what's been happening is while they're scrolling, they can miss the plot line of the actual movie. And so the movie companies are giving very clear instructions to movie developers when they're developing their pilot projects or their TV series. You've got to keep repeating the plot line like 3 or 4 times, because the people who are watching in this 25 to 34-year-old group, 94% of them scrolling on their own phones as they watch. Matt Damon recently commented on this because Netflix had asked him, with a film he's working on and developing, to really keep repeating that plot line. And if there's relationships, love relationships or whatever in the movie, be really, really obvious about it, because, the kids are missing it. Well, on the stock scene, if you saw it in the video, had an actual blowout earnings report now with, so NVIDIA stock has gone up 262% YOY, as they say, year over year, and has just done a 10-for-1 stock split. Their shares have gone up another 7%. So now for the first time, they're over the $1,000 threshold for the first time. That was really triggered by a big deal they just did with Meta, but huge numbers there. NVIDIA just is the gift that keeps on giving. If you're wondering about interest rates, you're going to be making bets on interest rates, as you know, by the Federal Reserve. This is in the U.S. As that federal rate goes down, more people can start borrowing, more money gets spent. That can drive inflation up, but it certainly gets spending and investment going. And all the money markets are predicting that in July, when the Fed comes out, they're going to be announcing another rate cut. I'm not announcing it here or giving you secret information. I'm just saying that's where the markets are seeming and trending to go. The European Parliament has just strongly condemned Turkey, and this is very rare for the EU Parliament, because Turkey is in a mass expulsion program of Christians who are there who were not born in Turkey, booting them out of the country. We're not seeing anything in the media about this, understandably so, but real concerns being raised, and especially at a time where, this is interesting, because this year Ramadan, of course the Muslim religious time of year, and Lent, which is largely practiced among large Christian communities, occurring at the same time. That only happens about once every 30 years. So maybe there can be some getting together in the minds over there in Turkey on this issue, and they can stop their discriminatory processes. If you are discouraged about that, a recent Barna study, now Barna is the group that does intense monitoring and studying of church-related items and what's happening on the faith-based world. And they are saying that the increase of millennials and Gen Z who are turning to church and turning to faith continues to go up. In the last year, there's been a spike of 19 percentage points over the previous year. So people of faith, there's a sign there of hope and spiritual renewal. Hope you like that. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.